Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started right at 2, so since we have so much to cover today. My name is Kate Donnelly, and I am the Client Marketing Manager at The Dude, and I'm going to moderate for you guys today. Want to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. The phones are muted, so any questions that you guys might have, just go ahead and use the Q&A feature or the chat feature down at the bottom of your screen that you should see in the toolbar. And I will hold all questions till the end. And if we don't get to all the questions, I will give them to Mary Beth to follow up personally, because we do want to get all your questions answered surrounding this topic. The next thing on my list is that this webinar is being recorded, so if you have to hop off early or if you want to share this presentation with somebody else afterwards, we will be emailing you the link to the recording by the end of this week or early next. And those are my main housekeeping items, so want to go ahead and get started. This was one of the most popular sessions we had at Dude University 2019 this year, so we wanted to give you guys a chance to hear it again, and for those of you who weren't there, to give you a preview of what kind of sessions to expect at Dude U 2020, and I'll touch a little bit on the conference here at the end of Mary Beth's presentation, so we can get you guys signed up and get you more information and that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Mary Beth to get stuff started for the presentation.
Thanks, Kate. I am so excited to be here with all of you today to talk about what I think is one of the crucial issues that we're all facing, no matter where we work, no matter how long we've worked, no matter what our positions are. And that's this impact in the world that is affecting all of us, of how we're now working with 5 generations. I didn't realize until we really started to talk and to think about this, and I've had this in the back of my mind for a long time to do a deeper dive and to have some discussions on it. But for the first time in history, we now have 5 generations of people in the workforce. So it leads to this question, what in the world is going on right now? How do we deal with this? Or maybe it isn't a problem to you, or maybe it is an opportunity that you want to plus in some way. I was looking at the site of the Department of Labor, and I have to tell all of you, I was absolutely aghast when I looked at those numbers. The numbers continue to grow in terms of the amount of positions that we have available across the workforce here in the United States, and the lack of workers that we have to fill these positions. The void is immense. Now, there's lots of reasons for the void, but at the end of the day, we have a bridge, we have a gap that we're going to have to look at if, in fact, we're going to continue to be impactful in what we do, and in some cases, even be able to keep our businesses, our departments functioning, whatever that may be. So I want to start with something that maybe is a little different, that you didn't give any thought to. I bet none of you imagine that the most powerful word this year is imagine. And there is a reason why this word kind of bubbled to the top. And this came out of Harvard. And Harvard very easily said, as they were looking at a very global overlook at what we're dealing with in terms of employment, in terms of in labor, that said, we need to do a better job of imagining how it is that we can do what we do. And so when we think about imagine, don't think about it as a fluff word. Don't think about it, as a dreamy word. Let's think of it as a very hard truth. Because with what we're going to have to do over the next decade, or perhaps longer, is we're going to have to work much more in tune with how we can imagine what our work environment is going to look like and what we're going to do to manage within the framework that we are charged to do. Once upon a time, we talked about professions. Now that has morphed that we talk about jobs or positions within jobs. most of us don't have professions per se. Well, maybe somebody that's listening, you might be an engineer, you may have something that takes a certification. But in today's world, we have jobs, we don't talk necessarily about careers. So what we have to do is to imagine what it is and what our perception is going to be in the work environment. So let's move this forward. Here's what we're talking about. We have these 5 generations that for the very first time, as I said, you're working side by side, and each of you probably have different leadership styles, you communicate differently, you have different styles in terms of how you look at your professional development. So the question is, what are we going to do about this? Well, the first thing is, let's just talk just a little bit and get some background about when we talk about 5 generations, as to who are they, and just give some general analogies of some traits that we seem to have been able to capture. But as we look at this, I have one task for you to do immediately. I want you to think about your area of responsibility and who you work with, and then look at that and see how many generations do you have that are influential in your world where you are today. Then broaden that out, and maybe it's in your organization, it could be in your school, it could be in your municipality, could be in a manufacturing area, but look at who is it that you interact with on a daily basis. So here we go. Here's what we said. First of all, we have to know who we are, where we work, where we live. And here is the question that I love to ask, is do you have passion? Do you have passion for what it is that you do? And is work a means to an end, or do you live to work or work to live? Those are important questions that you need to ask yourself as we begin to focus in on what is happening and how we are going to develop a workforce that is able to provide impact in what we do. So, okay, saying all that, here we go. Ready to rock and roll. We have challenges of blending a multi-generational workforce. We certainly do, because we have to do more with less. Now, we've always said that, we have budgets. Budgets never seem to go up at the same rate that we want them to go up. And it seems like if you're in business or wherever you are, we always have to do more with less. But what we haven't necessarily been able to challenge and to contain is how is it that we use teamwork as part of the drive of how we can be more successful with less. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk about teamwork in a little different ways than maybe we thought of before. I think in my experience of being out in the workforce, that showing managers and employees how to communicate with each other is absolutely crucial. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and don't crucify me here, folks, when I say this. I don't think we are necessarily very good communicators in today's world, and there's lots of reasons for it. Technology is wonderful, and we can name a lot of other kinds of things that may have changed the way that we communicate. I was just thinking that, the other day that I was at a birthday party, and a little girl wanted one of these play phones for one of the Disney characters, and it had a rotary dial on it. And so she picked this phone up and she looked at the handle of it, and then she saw, the ring where you put your finger in and you can dial. And she said, "Mommy, what's this?" Well, that's what we're talking about, folks. That's exactly. So we're going to talk about this whole thing of really true communication. Everybody's taken oodles of communication courses. I know all that. But I want us to think a little bit differently about that. And then we know we have the challenge of keeping up with the new trends and regulations and compliances. Those can make us crazy, absolutely crazy. So how is it that we can survive, move forward, and at the same time understand what the trends are coming down the road, what the trends are, what the data shows us, And how is it that we capture that through compliance and regulations? Yeah, all of you, I hope, are shaking your heads on this one. Supporting work-life balance to create a happier workforce. I have friends, I have colleagues that since they started work have never been happy, not happy about what they do. That's one issue. So how is it that, going back to what I said earlier, how is it that we invite passion in what we do? And that's a challenge. And how is it that we balance maybe what we want to do with what we need to do? Now, I'm not in a position, and I have not been in my whole life, that I didn't have to work. So I kind of made a decision early on, find out where I had some passion, work at it, and figure out where I could have impact. And that leads into this one. I think as we look at everybody who stands shoulder to shoulder with us, that we need to have a little better understanding of what motivates us. Now, I think there's some common threads, you know, when we begin to talk about, you know, the baby boomers and the traditionalists, there is a common denominator. But as we stand shoulder to shoulder, I wonder if we give thought as to what Joe standing by me, what motivates Joe, and Susan on the other side, what motivates her. That's part of a new way, maybe not a new way, but it is a opportunity for us to do a better job of working together to get results. And you know, I got to tell you, at the end of the day, it's all about getting results. And the things that we're talking about today are just not in the work environment. They may be in your home environment. You may have multi-generations at home. You may have multi-generations that you're working with in your churches or your faith-based organizations. What we're talking about today is not limited to just work. So here's where we are. 1% of the workforce is made up of the silent generation, and we're losing more and more of them. I think it's fascinating to talk to 18, 19-year-olds about what happened in the silent generation, because it's certainly historical. You know, my parents were the first ones that had black and white TV. They've gone from black and white TV to computers. Think about that. That's a huge jump. And basically, the majority of those people had a very strong emphasis on rules. Rules were important. I know growing up what the rules were, and if I didn't abide by being in that box with rules, what the repercussions are. So they understand rules. I wouldn't say necessarily they're compliant, but they function well in what I call sometimes a box. They lead with command and control style, very much so. This is what you must do. Remember, some of you might remember, I don't have to tell you the reason I told you no. You know, I told you no, and that's the way it is. Many of the silent generation, and you're going to find some of these traits interspersed all along the other four that we're going to talk about, prefer face-to-face interaction. Now, part of that was because of the lack of technology to technology that we have now. Think about where you are in this cycle, that when you started work, and we had messaging and we had paper messages and everything wasn't quite as immediate as it is now. But the silent generation preferred face-to-face kind of contact, and they communicated very formally, like in memos and letters. You know, we were taught, or the silent generation was taught to write thank you notes, you know, do those kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying that we don't do them today, but it is different. Baby boomers make up 27%. This generation is continuing to age out. and is, as everybody knows, the baby boomers have been a force to be reckoned with for a number of generations. Now, they make up about 27% of our workforce, but the numbers continue to decline rapidly. And here's why. They're retiring at a rate of about 10,000 people per day. But there's others that can't afford to retire and want to retain and work part-time. Some of them need to work part-time, others desire to work part-time because they feel they still have knowledge and expertise to offer. Those that work after retirement age like to do contract work primarily because they can come and go, pick their projects, it gives them a little bit more freedom. We see lots of, believe it or not, in this age group, would you believe that this is a very big entrepreneur age? It's because many of the baby boomers working don't want to come in and work 8 to 5 or 12 to 5. They want to be able to schedule their own time to work. And yep, they tend to be workaholics, and because they get personal fulfillment from work. This is the twist. Do we live to work or do we work to live? And this is in many times there is the conflict of how is it that we manage that. Again, this isn't a dead science on this, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the traits as we get talking a little bit about barriers. So then we have Generation X, and that's 35%, and they make up a huge part of our workforce, and they are very influential. Now, this is the group that really likes that independence, fewer rules, flow, offices without walls, come and go, take a nap during the day. I think all that stuff is great. I got to work on that nap during the day, though. And they like that work-family balance. They want to play. They want to be part of their family. They don't want to feel that work is their life. And they very much want to be able to sit side by side with leaders and to have that interaction. They want to be elbow to elbow and be able to share expertise, knowledge, and whatever directly. And they do feel that that's owed to them. They do feel that that is part of who they are. Then we have Generation Y, this fun age I call between 21 and 33, and they make up, again, 37% of our workforce. Now, I said something about the baby boomers and traditionalists being entrepreneurs. Well, this is another age group that has kind of circled back, and they like the entrepreneurship approach to work. They like to have direct communication and feedback. They want a social and friendly work environment. So now think about where you work. Think about that environment as you think about the different generations. Are you in offices? Are you in open? Do you have remote? How is it that you work? Because environment is huge. It is huge as to how people can interact and be productive. Not all people are productive in all arenas. Let me say that again. Not all people can be productive in all arenas. And so we need to figure out, what does the playing field look like? And then who plays in that particular sandbox? Generation Z, those are the ones that are under 20. They're yet to develop. That's that 1 to 2%. They live on their phones. They use Twitter to find jobs. They communicate by smartphone and email. When I'm talking to my younger kids and so forth, God help me if I picked up the phone to call them because it's going to go to voicemail. If I want to get any response, I either have to use some other, have to use email or, Twitter or do something because that's the only way I'm going to talk to them. And they have a huge network. And the network doesn't necessarily mean that people they know face to face. It's a huge difference. And they have very little job experience. I think Generation Z has so much potential, but we have a lot of work to do with them if, in fact, they're going to bring passion into the workforce. So here we are. So now we have a generation that is, aligned to their phones. Those are the ones that are crossing the street unaware of traffic coming. These are the ones that don't have a lot of job experience. They're very qualified. They can do a lot of different things. But this is a new generation that's coming in that we have to integrate with everything else. I think values are very important. And in talking to people and talking about these 5 generations, I wanted to have the opportunity to see, do we have any common denominators? And this was like, I found this so fascinating because I came up with 7 values that really matter most to everybody of all ages. So let me talk just a little bit about it, because I think these are huge. When I get up and go to work in the morning, I don't get up, look in the mirror and say, well, today I want to feel respected. I want to be listened to, I'm going to be positive in my feedback and so forth. These are somewhat what we call, soft traits. I'll talk a little bit about that more. But we have values that really still matter to us. And thank goodness, folks, we have values. Feeling respected, number 1. How often do we really listen to what we say and how we say it? Now, none of us are perfect. Every day can be hectic. And every day, if you're up to your knees in water, you can't say, will you please go shut off that valve? I mean, we have to figure out, but everybody wants to feel respected as individuals. Everybody, because they are a person, just in my opinion, earns the right of respect. Here's another one that goes into communication that we probably don't do very well, is listen. We're so busy forming in our head what we want to say, how we're going to say it, and what points we're going to make, that we don't bother to listen to what is being shared with us. Active listening is a real art, and those that I think are the best leaders are those that keep their mouths shut and their ears open. We learn by far more when we do that. And do we take the time to mentor? Now, mentoring isn't like tutoring. Mentoring is making time for others of all ages. We mentor up and we mentor down. Doesn't make any difference. Everybody loves to feel like you're important. That's what mentoring really does. It makes the person who's mentoring feel like they have something to offer, and the person that's being mentored has the opportunity to learn from somebody else. Mentoring could be, getting a sandwich. It could be, going to get a pad. It could be in the workroom. It could be a variety of different things. And it doesn't have to be more than 5 minutes. And it needs not be more than, oh, wow, have you thought about this? Or, this happened, I just thought I'd share it. It all goes back to communication, folks. Understanding the best picture. It's so easy that we sit in our own little world, in our own little pod, or our own little area with our own little people. We're creatures of habit. Understanding the big picture is stepping out of habit. It's stepping into a world that may not be comfortable. And that means we have to look. I said the word of 2019 is imagine. Well, imagine if we had a broader view. Imagine in all of these values that are talked about, if we were better at respect, if we were better at communication. Imagine the lengths we could go to. It's amazing. We could see the bigger picture. We're better at communication that that is directed to us, that we are a sieve. So ask yourself, here's a great question. Am I a sieve to what is being told to me? Or do I block it so that I don't hear it and I don't have to act on it? I don't have to do anything with it. What do you do with it? And the same thing about receiving positive feedback. Don't slack at that. Enjoy it. That's what we need to be doing, is giving feedback back and forth, good, bad, and indifferent, I'd say. There's ways to do it. And finally, experiencing an exchange of ideas. Now, look at all of this. These are values, but most of them all tie back to communication. And yet we're in the technology world. And here comes some of the stuff, the tough stuff that we have to think about. We have technology, computers, and so forth. We could go all day if we needed to and not talk to a person and not interact with somebody. But we know that in what we're dealing with today, we can't do that. So if we know what our basic values and we can tune into those, will that make what we have to do at the end of the day easier? So now, here it is, folks. We've got to manage all these different generations, or we have to lead, or we have to interact. So one of the things we do have to be aware of, if it exists, and this means by not sticking your head in the sand and say, we don't have that problem here. I hear that all the time. No, that's not us. We need to be aware if there's generational tension. And most of the times it's because, people say, well, I just don't understand. I don't get it. Well, of course we don't get it, because if you didn't live in it, we haven't been aware of it. If we don't know it, we have parents or grandparents that were in the Depression. We have parents that didn't own a computer until maybe a number of years ago. You don't know what you don't know. So we need to be conscious of our surroundings. I always love it. I go to the grocery store or whatever, and I have this little thing about space. And I'd be walking down the aisle, and somebody's either on the phone or maybe just not even aware of the spatial around them. And it's just like they live in their own little world. Well, we can't live in our own little world. We really can't. And we need to understand that the organizational careers that we once saw, read about, heard about, dreamed about, don't look like they did before. It's all different. And that goes back to, we can imagine, and we can change, and we can do all of these things if, in fact, we recognize what the values are, who brings them to the table, and we are willing to put our arms around items that are a little bit different to reach a common goal. Reach a common goal. So we know that we don't want to dwell on the differences. When I started in my work environment, I can remember being in meetings and so forth, and somebody would go on and on and on and on about the differences. And it's like, okay, we're different, so what does that do? My personal feeling, affinity groups are a waste of time and energy, because we feel what we feel, we know what we know. So let's not dwell on the differences. We know we all have them. So if we have that contract up front that says, yeah, we're all different, we have some commonalities, but I don't want to deal on those. Let's figure out what we have in common and what we can do as a team. You bring that, you bring that, you bring that. Let's package it and move on. And that leads right into this. Build collaborative relationships. And trust me on here, I'm not going to go political on you, but we're not in an environment right now that collaboration is high. We're not seeing a lot of. We're seeing more of my way or the highway, perhaps. But we need to be collaborative. We need to know how it is that we give and take and massage and be respectful. We need to encourage debate. Debate is great. Debate is about sharing opportunities in a respectful manner and to understand from whence we all come from. We all come from different experiences. And again, we only know what we know, and we only know what we don't know. So to build collaborative relationships takes out a lot of the barriers. If we can understand and talk to each other and be respectful and move forward, we have a better chance of building what we need to build. So, here it is. 25% of the workforce will be made up by Gen Z by 2022. So what do you think about that? Look about your office, wherever you are. Think about what that Generation Z is going to bring to the table. But think about, imagine what you can do to help them be the best they can be and be integrated into the rest of the 75% that's out there. 21 to 25, age of employees, mentoring most appeals to. So if we know that, if that's what, and that gets them to a place that we want to be, and then we know we have those 50 and up, wow, data is important. Take the data, move with it, and use it. And then 86% of employees cite poor communication for workplace failure. That's inexcusable, people. That's really inexcusable. We can do something about that. We can take that and say, I'm not going to be part of that. I don't want to be part of that problem. And in doing that, it allows us to be better at our jobs and to be better at what we're doing, whether it's in a technology field or whatever it may be. So here's the bottom line. Where and how do we fill the needed workforce pipeline? Where are they going to come from? Well, that's a great question. But it is much easier to retain workers than it is to hire new, particularly now when we don't have an overabundance of workers. And we don't have an overabundance of perhaps the trained workers that you need. So it behooves us to understand all these generations and how we can even be better at what we do by utilizing the traits, the experiences, the knowledge of what we all bring to the table. U.S. Bureau of Labor says that by 2028, there'll be 43 million people, 55 or older in the workplace. That's a fourth of all workers. I don't know, is that good? Is that bad? The statistic says then that we're keeping older workers at almost the same rate that we're bringing in new people into the workplace. Now, those are two different ends of the spectrum. So how is it that we're going to connect all of the dots? Because we know that technology growth is just going to impact everything that we do from the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed. And that we have to be on top of that at the same time. And entrepreneurship will continue to grow. And all of this combined together really changes the pattern of how we work, who we work with, and how it is that we're successful. So the most important soft skills in today's work environment, and here's where I'm going to go with this. You see them listed there. Creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, time management. Okay? And you're all sitting there going, yep, I know that. Well, the other side of the screen, I didn't put in. And maybe you're asking yourself and you're saying, well, what are the hard skills? Well, the hard skills probably are in the hundreds. They're everything around technology. They're hard skills that you learn or you've been trained to do. But soft skills, that's a different issue. So let me talk a little bit about creativity. Creativity isn't something that you go to college and you sign up for 101 creativity, and you go through a semester and you come out and you get a grade. It isn't about that. Creativity is about how it is that you imagine and how is it that you think beyond the box. Now, being in the box isn't all bad because we can't all be the same. We need to have people that have that framework. But we also need to be able to think differently. And here's the thing. We have the people that we can do that. We do. We've got these 5 generations, and we have people that are creative in a variety of different levels and abilities. Persuasion, to some degree, is a lost art because we get angry. Persuasion isn't about my way. Persuasion isn't about getting angry or walking away. Persuasion is about talking through an issue with facts, circumstances, and a logical approach. Persuasion takes time. How many times have you been in a position where you had a supervisor or someone that you really wanted to persuade to either do something differently? And so at the last moment, whatever, you barge into the office and say, you want to talk about this. But you didn't really give it any forethought as to how this person was going to be the receiver of the message that you want to deliver because you didn't think it through. Persuasion is about a thought process. Collaboration, we talked a little bit about collaboration, that ability to work together. Think about kids in kindergarten. They're just now starting to learn that. They're learning how to play with toys in the sandbox. I have a little nephew that I thought was going to get kicked out of preschool the first day because he is an only child and went to preschool, was playing in the sandbox, and another child came up and took his tractor. Well, my nephew being my nephew just hauled off and popped him one. Well, that wasn't a very collaborative skill and play teamwork that he used. He has a lot of work to do. But my analogy is the same. It's the very same. We can't just take our tools and walk away. We don't have the people. We don't have the time. We have to figure out how is it that we're all going to work and live together in this world, which means we have to adapt. The world is changing, folks. Every day there's something new. And it is so easy just to sit and say, I just can't deal with this anymore. I feel like all I'm doing is churning and burning. Okay? So what are the skills that we need to learn to be more adaptable? We need to learn those. Soft skills take a lot of hard work. Hard skills take education, take training, but the soft skills are the ones that, in my opinion, that allow us to do what we need to do. Time management. I'm not sure that this is important. I'm not sure how high on my list this is, because time management to me is a conscientious decision. I could teach everybody, how to file or however, they put their calendars and whatever, but it's a conscientious decision. We can teach different kinds of ways for time management, but at the end of the day, it's all about getting done what you want to get done, have to get done in a framework that's appropriate from where you're working from. So time management, I was reading the book not too long ago that they said time management is a myth. And to a certain degree of that, depending on your perceptions of that could be true. Time management is about knowing who you are, getting the most out of what you have to do in an appropriate manner. Now, I'm rolling right along here. So here's some things that you can do. Experiment with mixed-age teams and reverse your mentoring programs so that enables others that are older to interact and learn with younger hires. Put everybody together, fruit basket upset. We learn from each other. Experiment. all people like to do different things in different ways. Well, imagine how you could do it. It'll be great fun, and you'll get great results. Incentive plans that reflect where your employees are in their lives. We all like to be rewarded, and reward isn't always in the paycheck. There's different kind of incentive programs. Know what invigorates, know what motivates people in your work team, and not everything motivates everybody the same. So take time to figure that out. Your regular human resources surveys kind of get a pulse on the demographics and needs, but there has to be a trust factor. My suggestion on surveys, if you really want to learn, is based upon the trust of your leadership or the trust of how the organization, company perceives information that may not be all hunky-dory, as we say. So trust is a huge factor in everything that we do, plus our communication. If we don't have trust, it is difficult to get to a level that we want. And as we talked about, one of the opportunities is to avoid the generation employee affinity groups, as they generally reinforce, the stereotypes. Because how often is it that you go someplace and let's say you have a company dinner, people that identify with each other or you have an affinity group typically sit together. Okay, so what if you develop a culture that says, we want to embrace all and we want to do things differently? Because if we are learning about other people and how they work, that might make me look good. I don't have to do it all by myself. My favorite one is this one, and I came out of the not-for-profit world, and then I went to the for-profit, and then I went to my own little world, you might say. And here's one of the things I've learned is that managing down does not forge any kind of relationship, does not make us any better. I think it divides the ages, and so what I say is manage down, manage up. We all have the opportunity, no matter where we are in our work life or our work positions, we can manage up at the same time we're managing down. That allows for all voices, all ages, to be able to share their opinions without repercussions. And that's what we're always afraid of. We're always afraid of, if I say something, it's going to come back against me, they're going to hold that over me forever. No, let's have an environment where all opinions are respected. We can't assume that we know how to motivate. We need to ask them what they want out of their professional life. That's a simple question. What is it that I can do to make you better? What is it at the end of the day that makes you a better professional? Add that. Because the choices that you make today influence your industry in the future. Now, I don't care what you do. Don't you look at having a legacy of when you walk out the door for your retirement? I think that's one of the most important things that we can talk about is our own legacy. Because that legacy adds to the legacy of wherever it is that we're employed, volunteer, whatever. And that's pretty important. Future-proof your work so that it can rise to the occasion of a changing workforce. My gosh, I can't think of anything more worthwhile as I don't want an output when I'm done. I want impact. I don't want to just be producing to produce, to meet something on paper. I want it to be future-proof. I want the legacy that will stand up against the changing workforce and be part of that change in a way that is positive. Leave that legacy as a team person, because the fields are changing, and when we deal with management and leadership, it's no different. So as we come to kind of a very fast into a huge topic that I talk very fast about, I want you to think about where you are and think about how you get caught up in the outputs and not in the results or the impact. There's no easy solution to what we're talking about. We have more jobs than we have workers. We have more pressure on us to produce all the time, and we have to do it with less. So the perception is that we do have to think differently. And in thinking differently, we have an opportunity because never before did we have these 5 generations of all this knowledge and experience. Think about this. We have a tremendous amount of knowledge that we can bolster and can help us do things that we've never had before. It's not realistic to think that we get the best results by all of us being alike. Think about that. It doesn't work. The best results are if we incorporate a variety of different experiences, thought processes, and people together. And my final comment in all of what we're talking about is very basic, is understand your native language. Wherever you are, understand what the native language that is spoken around you, meaning what is the culture in your organization, your business? How do I identify with that native language so that I can encourage, foster, mentor, work with, whatever it takes to leave the legacy that we need to leave? Thinking alike doesn't always work. Thinking together to build a better work environment world does make a difference. So I'm going to kind of stop here. We'll have some questions. As Kate said as we started, I'm always available. If you want to have further chatter with me, please feel free to. I think Kate's going to mention a couple things, and then we'll kind of wrap us all up. And I just really enjoyed this today. So I hope that you get one little nugget out of it that will help you moving forward.
Thank you so much for that. We've got some good questions, but before I go ahead and ask those, I wanted to touch on the fact that this was a really good session at Dude U 2019. It was one of our most popular. We wanted to bring it back to you guys for an opportunity to hear it again. And just wanted to touch on that Dude U 2020 is going to be May 3 through 6. It's going to be in Raleigh. We do have our Dude deal open and available now, and that's $17.95 to go to the conference as well as pay for your hotel. So super awesome. When you come to Dude U, the Learning Lab is one of the main things that we tout besides sessions like this one that Mary Beth just gave to you guys. It's where you can meet our client success team face-to-face with over 200 computers set up. You just sit down right next to them, bring your hardest questions, anything like that. You can get hands-on, in-person training. It's just fantastic. And we've got over 150 sessions for you guys, a mixture of thought leadership topics like this one, as well as actual product training classes. So it's a really, really great experience. And you can also meet your client success team in person and get an account review and a full audit of how you're doing with your tools and everything like that, and what you could be doing better and where you're really thriving compared to the rest of our client base. So just wanted to throw this poll up really quickly to see if you guys want to get signed up for Dude U. I can shoot you guys a link right after this, or if you just want more information, we can get you that as well. Because we really want to see you guys out there in person and meet everybody and things like that. So I'll leave this poll up while I ask some questions. The first one was from early on from Scott. And they want to know, how do you help support that work-life balance for your employees? Is it encouraging less overtime and more vacation time? That increases the need for workers, subs, overtime for other workers, though. So can you give some examples, or do we just quote-unquote budget and expect this?
Well, I don't think that budgeting is always the answer. I think the first thing that my experience has been is to find out what is it that your employees are wanting. Overtime is a huge issue right now, and by making people work more, can you figure out how you can make them work smarter? In some professions, you can work from home. you know, versus coming into the office, you know, how can you work smarter? I would ask your employees or your team, how is it and what is it that would make a difference to them? Now, at the end of the day, you as the manager or the leader have to figure out, does that work? I would be more than glad to talk with you and give you some examples at a later time, and so don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Another one from Kristen is, any specific suggestions on successfully managing employees that are older than you?
Yeah, actually is that one of the things that I have learned is don't let the age become an issue. It isn't, because many older people think young. And just because they have perhaps more work experience, I think that ability to ask questions and to listen effectively helps to eliminate that kind of feeling of intimidation, because the older worker isn't looking at it that way. The other thing is actually sit down and say, you know, I want to make sure that I'm doing right by you. It would be helpful for me to know, how is it that we can best communicate? How is it that I can work with you the best? Again, coming back to conversation in not letting the walls go up. Sometimes those walls are what we perceive, and other times they can be, you know, an older worker can put them up saying, you know, I really know more, you're just a, you know, just a pipsqueak here. Try the communication piece, you know, say, I want to be helpful to you, I want to do what I can for you, how is it the best that we can do this together?
So another one is, what's the best approach to understand your team's demographics and needs as a person without getting into their personal and private life?
Yeah, now that's a really great question. And I think that good leaders are astute at the people that work with us. Listening to others over lunch in a cafeteria will tell you what happened over the weekend, whether somebody is a skier, a bowler, has, you know, kids or whatever. I think observation, listening, testing out such things as, you know, I think I heard, or did I hear you say that you like to do this? You know, my kids go to such and such a school. There's some questions that are part of conversation that you can ask. We are afraid, and rightfully so to some degree. But conversation to back and forth to elicit information we shouldn't back away from. We shouldn't back away from it. But I think we can be better listeners. We can be better observers. We know, you know, how they work. We all converse and have dialogues all the time. I think we just need to plus those better and not be afraid to get to know our people better.
So we have time for one more. There is more than one question, but I'll be sure to pass those on to you, Mary Beth, so you can personally reach out.
And I'm going very fast on these, Kate, and I probably could give some more detail to folks if we had a conversation, and I'm more than glad to do that.
I will actually down in the chat feature to all attendees. I can type your email address. Are you okay with that? So you can so they can reach out to you with any questions. Let me type that before I ask. Well, let me ask the last question first. What are some things that you think motivate the Gen Z to work for a company?
I think that if we're working with that age group, I think that communication, direct communication all the time is one of the most important things. And I have a great story, but it's too long, so I'm not going to tell it. I had a Gen Z that worked for me not too long ago, and I thought this person was going to drive me crazy because this person was always in wanting to know everything that was going on until I realized that what we were talking about was not top secret. This person was really interested in what they could do to make what we were doing better. And I had to change from, from protecting information to being a better sharer of information. I also think that they want to be successful. The other thing I learned is that they probably weren't going to work for me for 5 years. They probably were going to look for a couple of years and then they're going to move on. So I feel that my job was to make them the very best that they could be in the time that I had them or employed them, and took great pride if and when they left and went to another position. Now, that took me a long time to get to there, to realize that they're not looking at professions. They like short projects. I had my best luck with them is, this is your project. This is the date that it's due, and to do it in project. I also found out that they're not always great multitaskers. And for some of us that multitask or think that we do that, I found that they are not necessarily that. They want one project, they want to do that well, they want to be done with it, and then they want to have downtime. So those are some thoughts around that. Again, that's a generalization, but I think they have lots to offer, but we have lots of work that we need to do with them.
Yep. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today, and any questions we didn't get to, I will be sure to pass along to Mary Beth. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Mary Beth, thank you for your time. This is a fantastic topic, and everyone else, just have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.